I love to watch the waves after a storm. The storm can be long gone, but the waves just keep going.
Get into the out there. The Weather Channel.
Currently in our area, 73 degrees under clear skies. Tonight, late night thunderstorms, low 67. Chance of rain, 60%. Saturday, mostly cloudy. A stray shower or thunderstorm is possible. High 88. Saturday night, variably cloudy with scattered thunderstorms. Low 66. Chance of rain, 50%. Here's our 7-day outlook.
Welcome back. We have a new advisory from the National Hurricane Center, and we are still looking at a potential tropical cyclone, which means that most likely this storm is not going to become a tropical depression or a tropical storm. One of the requisite things for a tropical storm is a well-defined center of circulation. The storm has never really had that. We've seen a broad area of spin here south of Louisiana, but all the thunderstorms really well displaced from that center because there's been very strong wind coming across the storm, and so that really is the enemy of a tropical cyclone. Tropical cyclones like to collect thunderstorms about their center, and once that happens, it can become a big heat engine, drawing in more and more warm and humid air, and that releases heat, and that creates low pressure, which draws in even more warm and humid air and increases the winds. All of that depends on thunderstorms forming about the center, and this thing has never had that because there's been really strong wind coming right across the middle of this storm. There's been wind shear, as we call it. That's not going away. It's not getting more organized. So there's really not going to be a huge wind threat nor a huge surge threat. There will be some coastal flooding, most likely, but the main thing is you've got this big mass of tropical moisture that is coming up and across the southeast. So here's the forecast track from the National Hurricane Center. You know, no really big changes here. Again, looking for a weaker system to come through. But this is a good, example of how the impacts of the storm can be well outside of the cone. You always hear people say, when we send our reporters out into the field, our meteorologists out into the field, they interview people, and you always hear people say, well, we were in the cone, so we felt like we should do X, Y, and Z, or we weren't in the cone, so we felt like it was okay to do this, that, or the other. It's really, really important to not think that way, because the cone is only showing you where the center of circulation is going. And especially when you've got what's called an asymmetrical storm, where the weather is displaced from that center, where the center goes may not tell you that much about where the weather is going to go. And so here's an example of that. We're looking at the rain total forecast. Now, we are going to see a fair amount of that rain along the path of this cone. So the cone is a little more relevant there in parts of central Alabama as well as into Georgia. There it does make sense to think about whether you're in the cone or not. But what about here? In southern parts of Mississippi, in Alabama, Mobile, Biloxi, Pascagoula, over into northwest Florida. There are a lot of areas there where a lot of people live that are nowhere near that cone that are going to get just clobbered by rainfall. So, again, really, really important not to focus on where you are relative to the cone. It's only showing you where the center is going to be. Now, looking at rainfall, we've got some really heavy rain that is coming up across southeast Louisiana. And, within that, we're also looking at some spin in some areas. I mean, that area of I-10 from Gulfport to Slidell to just east of New Orleans, going to get really just hammered by rainfall over the next, say, hour or two here, Jeff. And we are also seeing some spin within these areas and some concern for water spouts.
Yeah, something you always have to watch out for with a landfalling tropical system. All right, this falls into the category of what you should not do as a tropical system approaches. I know I've talked to many a surfer and windsurfer and kite surfer, like this guy is, and as soon as they hear tropical system, they head to the coast because that's where the wind is going to be, and you can catch some good air, as this guy's been doing. There you can see him, and that's what they live for. They love to go out in this stuff. Now, I know that guy has a helmet on, but this is very, very dangerous stuff, particularly with that rock jetty being there and some of those pilings as well. It wouldn't take too much to get yourself in a very bad situation. So we do not recommend that you go out in these kinds of conditions. Another big threat, obviously, is the rip current threat, and we talk about this a lot. Now, this is happening because you've got all this water, which, as Carl's been mentioning, with onshore winds is piling up against the coast. And yeah, that's not when you want to go out into that rough surf, because you could get pulled out very, very quickly. The rip current risk is very high all along the northern Gulf Coast. So far this year, and we haven't really had any landfalling tropical systems up until tonight, we've already had 7 deaths there in Florida and 15 overall, including one in the Great Lakes as well. You can get some rip currents there, believe it or not. So what happens with a rip current? Well, you get all this water, in this case, the Gulf water, pushing up against the coast. It has nowhere to go. It has to kind of go back out eventually. And what it does, or how it does that, is in these narrow channels pushing away from the coast, which we call rip currents. And if you get caught in one of those, what you cannot do is try to swim directly against that. A lot of people do. They panic. They feel themselves getting pulled out. They try to swim back into shore, and you tire out, and that's when you end up going under. In this case, you should let that go out. I know that seems counterintuitive, but let the rip current take you out until it dissipates, then swim parallel to the shore, and then try to swim back in. Of course, if you're onshore, you should, if you see somebody in trouble, always call 911 or signal to a lifeguard. Our live tropical coverage continues. Coming up next, well, we'll be with you all the way till 1 a.m. And then in the morning, we'll be back starting at 5 a.m. with live team coverage all across the Gulf and even far inland up to Montgomery, Alabama with Mike Seidel.